This is a big deal every year. We talk about it every year. Now, the 49ers, the last time they were in the Super Bowl, they had a Super Bowl hangover, but a lot of that was injury related. If you remember, Bosa wrecked his season week 2. Jimmy also hurt. This was Jimmy before they had any quarterbacks to
Right.
back. Jimmy screwed up his ankle week 2. Who Fred Warner, I think, missed some time. Fred
There
Warner's
was another D lineman that was out for the season. I don't know if it was Solomon Thomas or one of the interior guys ended up
Solomon, I
breaking.
think you might, yeah, might be
It was
right.
all that one Jets game that everybody got ripped up. I think one of the corners went down. They had a safety go down. Like there was a lot of season-ending injuries.
Mm. Yeah, there was a lot. So I think we look at it and we say, okay, well, that's not really a hangover. That was just unfortunate events. But to me, I'm going to go over Super Bowl hangover and why I think it's so hard for these teams to bounce back. And you tell me if you want to add anything, you disagree with anything. I think injuries is one of those things. I think whenever you make a long run in a physical sport, especially now that they've added the extra game, that's one of those things that you have to deal with. You have to deal with wear and tear, and you can only get in so many car crashes as a football player. So if you've just come off of a long season, I think your chances of injury probably would just naturally be a little bit higher because you've gotten in more car crashes. So I think that that's a possibility. I also think teams that go to the Super Bowl are a little bit behind in preparation for the upcoming season, right? Like the one advantage is, hey, you're a really good team. And as long as you're bringing your core back, like the 49ers are, you should still be very competitive, at least on paper. But as you can see, the whole league has hired their coaches. The 49ers have an open defensive coordinator spot, and there's not a lot to choose from because every coach has been plucked and put onto a different team, right? So you're behind the 8 ball if you are making any new hires the way that the 49ers are. And you're also behind the 8 ball as far as some of your preparation and just getting ready for, maybe the draft. Now your scouts are always looking, I understand that, but your coaches are not, right? So now your coaches are a little bit behind as far as preparation for the draft, and just what you're going to do for the upcoming season, how you're going to attack free agency, all those things. I just think your preparation is slightly behind. And so I think for those reasons, the car crash thing, and just not being ahead of schedule makes it that these teams have a bit of a Super Bowl hangover. Do you agree or disagree with that? Is there anything you would like to add?
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know if they necessarily play as big of a role for the 49ers because um, of the systems that are in place and the main pieces are still coming back. The one thing, though, that is always could derail it is injuries because I don't think it's going to be a lack of preparation. I don't think it's going to be a lack of motivation, but you could only do so much to protect from injuries. It is the very aggressive and physical game. So if some of these quote unquote core players go down that are just hard to replace, a Bosa, obviously a Purdy, CMC, like any of these guys go down for the season, that's hard. Not many teams are gonna be able to overcome that, right? So injury to me, I agree with, but I do think that the 49ers do have some things that are going in their benefit. And part of it is the extremes of where their team is. And what I mean by that is, so the most important position we know is quarterback. Well, Purdy is playing for a lot this year because he still hasn't gotten paid. And it's pretty much what's it called? Like a pay me season, right? Like he either does what he needs to do to get that money or he doesn't. So the most important position is going to be ultra motivated because it's the year that everybody's going to look at whether or not he should get paid or not. So to me, that's in the benefit of the 49ers that where Jalen Hurts, right, just got paid and he obviously didn't play to his previous year caliber. I think it was due to injury, but regardless, the stats are the stats. Purdy, if he has that kind of year, he knows he's not going to get the extension that he wants or get paid big money. So to me, that's in his favor. The other thing is the older guys that are on the 49ers, Jesse, have never won a Super Bowl. So they're not satisfied, right? They're not just satisfied going into retirement without winning one, right? You know, the guys like Trent Williams, he's talking about breaking records. That's why he wants to come back. So, you know, stats matter to him. Getting into the Hall of Fame matters to him. Being able to win a Super Bowl matters to him. You know, and we know the culture of this team, that they all play for each other. And I think that's important. You saw Brock Purdy not talk about how he's upset for himself. He was upset for the guys that he knows don't have as many years in the league, that they didn't get it, right? So you saw how upset Fred Warner was when Dre got injured. Like, these guys really have a bond and a brotherhood, and they play for each other. I think that's different than a lot of other teams that necessarily make it that far. And I think that's a reason why the 49ers are constantly in contention. They're constantly in these championship games, is because of that core culture. And I don't think that's going to necessarily change, because they're bringing pretty much everybody back that's important to creating that culture and keeping that culture going. So to me, the only thing that will derail this team from being able to get back to where they need to get back to is injuries.
Well, and they're already starting off on the wrong foot with that, right? Because Dre Greenlaw is going to miss some time, presumably. Mm-hmm. And then Huff's coming off of a major injury. So they're already behind as far as that goes. What do you think? What do you think would constitute saying that the 49ers had a Super Bowl hangover? Is it not making the playoffs? Is that the only way to have a Super Bowl hangover? Or if let's say they lost in the wild card or the divisional, anything short of the NFC Championship, do you think that's a Super Bowl hangover? Like, what would you say is a quote unquote meets the criteria of a Super Bowl hangover in your opinion?
I think it's the eye test, man. You got to say, I would say the Eagles were a Super Bowl hangover, right? Yeah. They looked really, really good for most of the season, and then they ran out of gas. To me, that's part of the Super Bowl hangover, right? They didn't, even though their record looked great, they made it to the playoffs. You know, they fell apart at the end of the year, and I think that constitutes as it. To me, it's more subjective than objective, I would say, because even if the 49ers get it, let's say they get into the playoffs as a wild card team, but then they look dominant and make it all the way to the Super Bowl, and let's say they lose again in the Super Bowl, can you say that's a hangover because they lost in the Super Bowl, or because they didn't have like the year that they were supposed to have? I don't know. To me, this is a Super Bowl or bust team. So ultimately, it's how competitive they were to winning a Super Bowl, to getting to the Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl. If they didn't look competitive, I would call that a hangover. If they were competitive, I would say it wasn't because of it was a hangover. It was because of other reasons.